Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 342 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. Check them out at PerformBetter.com. I'm your host, Anthony Rana. The show notes are located at my site, ContinueFit.com. You can also get it at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. All right, on the StrengthCoach.com and NBSC.TV Coaches Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about the value of exercise for fat loss, unilateral hops for distance, and a question about where to draw the line on discipline. Naamly, it's the member experience platform for modern training gyms. It puts all of your communication with your members in one place, allowing you to keep track of that communication. So important for retention. Go to Naamly.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what it's all about. Use the referral code Strength Coach to get started on your free 30-day trial. For the Naamly Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, I have on Allie Gilbert-Weingroff. She's going to talk about what the problem that men are facing right now in regards to testosterone, specifically low testosterone, the symptoms of low T, and how to determine if that's really the cause, looking at testosterone levels and the importance of free testosterone, not just the overall testosterone level, what the consequences of low T can be, how do we fix it with and without TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, the myths of testosterone replacement therapy, and we're going to talk all about the Silverback Summit that she's hosting in October in Florida. You want to check that out. All right, for the KISS Marketing Business Secrets for Gym Owner segment with Vince Gabriele, Vince is going to talk about the wrong question that so many gym owners still ask. I'm not even going to give you a little hint about that. It's a good one. KISS Marketing is a digital marketing agency that helps fitness business owners make the big bucks from their marketing without feeling stupid, stressed, or wasting valuable time figuring it all out on your own. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson, Vince Gabriele's secret marketing weapon. For the Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training segment, brought to you by Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. The cameras effortlessly quantify weight room performance without detracting from it. So this week, Nick is going to talk about the importance of load velocity profiles. Does a great job with this, as always. Guys, the huge summer sale is going on at Perform Better right now. 40% off a ton of items, including TRX, suspension trainers, ultimate sandbags, all kinds of cleaning supplies, roll-go rollers, plyo boxes, so much more. Check them out at PerformBetter.com. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and NBSC.TV Coaches Corner with Coach Boyle. You can try the new StrengthCoach.com out. 7 days, absolutely free. Totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum as always. It's the place where top coaches in the industry come to connect and learn. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. Coach, coming directly from Providence last weekend. How you doing?
I am doing tremendous. I haven't used tremendous, so I think I'm tremendous today.
Yeah, well, I'm doing worse now. We just talked a little bit about Providence. I wasn't able to make it, and just so bummed because it's something for me, my personality, that I need a lot of, and I missed during the pandemic, and certainly missed because I live in Indiana now. It's not the easy 2-hour ride up to Providence or Boston, but glad you guys had a great time there.
We did have a great time. As I said to you sort of when we talked a little bit before we got going here, it was really good to see. I saw some people that, and I feel like we're so like, pre-pandemic or COVID or whatever, but we haven't seen a lot of these guys in a couple of years. So it was really nice. As I said, it was great to see Dan John and great to see Todd Wright and great to see Charlie and great to see it was just a lot of people that it was great to see. I said I had a great conversation with Martin Rooney. We've always had great sort of life conversations. So all that stuff was really good. And I mean, the last thing I saw all the Perform Better folks, because we were at Aaron and Rob's wedding, but the people sort of outside of the company sphere, we haven't seen for, I guess, going on 3 years, right?
Yeah. It's been, it was 2019, everything got canceled in 2020. So, I think, besides a couple like Charlie and Allie, their wedding, Rob and Erin's wedding, and then, the Perform Better in December of 2021 was not the same because it was a much smaller scale. So, I was in Chicago this year. It was just great being around all those people and seeing the enthusiasm and getting to talk to everybody. So definitely missed it.
Yeah, and it was funny. I think about the December one now, and I realize one of the things that you miss is the room switching.
Oh, yeah.
Basically had one room, so people stayed seated for a long period of time. And so much of, and Chris emphasized that during the Q&A in terms of, telling people to get to the social and to talk to people and to do all that stuff. But so much of the interaction is in the hallway and in between sessions. So that kind of lobby up above where the lecture rooms and the hands-on two are is where a lot of the really good interaction goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. I'll have to wait till next year. But, Coach, let's get to this. Speaking of the ShrinkCoach.com forum, Abby R., the classic poster, he talked about one of his clients who was, in a fat loss idea or a phase. And he said he trains really well, but he gets hungry and he struggles because he gets hungry and he eats more. So they kind of dialed back the training. And you had kind of commented on it. It always goes back to the idea that exercise is not an effective weight loss tool. I think that is one of the great lies in our field. If weight loss is the goal, walk a lot and change your diet. Working hard seems to merit a reward, and that reward is often food. Most people who start training hard actually gain weight because they overestimate their caloric expenditure. Can you kind of expand on this? Only because I think people will, a lot of times when you talk, they listen for the sound bites, but they don't really understand. It's not that you're not saying don't train, because muscle is an important part of it. And obviously you own a gym and it's great to get in the gym, but I think we've looked at it. You're just saying we look at it from a different perspective.
Yes, I guess the difference is what I want people to understand is that I think there are tremendous benefits to resistance training in terms of having more muscle mass and avoiding osteoporosis and all of these things. But one of those benefits is not, generally speaking, weight loss. And I think what's happened is that we've got people so convinced that weight loss is about working out when it's really not. It's about what you eat. And so when you have somebody who's struggling with weight gain or with not losing weight, it's not the amount of exercise they're doing. And generally, I was really critical of this early on because I think we really misled women for a really long time with this idea that the more cardio they did, the more weight that they would lose. And you'd end up with people who were doing hours and hours and hours of cardiovascular work a week and yet not losing weight. And you realize because the energy expenditure of those tasks are so low, they can easily be offset by a handful of cookies.
Yep.
And so it's just, I want people to deliver the proper, honest message to somebody, which is, and I tell people all the time, if you're not willing to commit to your diet, you may get healthier, you may get fitter, you may get more muscular. There's a lot of things you may get. You probably won't get leaner. And that's just the reality of the relationship of diet and exercise. And I don't know if you remember, Instagram years ago, I took my little ball peen hammer and a sledgehammer and I put them next to each other and took a picture. And I said, ball peen hammer is exercise, sledgehammer is diet. And I want people to look at that graphic and realize, okay, if I really want to make a change, I have to make a nutritional change. If the change that I'm looking for is in appearance, how I look. And so that's the point I'm trying to make, and I continue to try to make it because I think we still end up in situations where we're consistently misleading people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times from the perspective of this idea of like not a shortcut or a hack, but yeah, this is all, it's just part of the program, the whole program. It's not the main piece either. And that's why I know in my program right now, what I'm trying to get people to understand is this idea about NEAT, about, what they're eating, about, the relationship or those triggers with food. But it's definitely, not, my program, we're not working out 6 days a week. And when we do, it's based on a lot of the good science that has come out about, doing some high intensity stuff, but for a short amount of time. And then really the real hack is go for that quote unquote zone 2 cardio for the next 20 to 30 minutes. Find a way to do that afterward. And that's going to kind of expedite the whole process, but just to train a little bit smarter. But yeah, it's definitely, I just wanted to clarify that because I know how people are like, everything you say, like, oh, Mike's saying don't train to lose weight. Stupid.
Yeah, it's amazing how people cannot really. I think part of it is that people just don't take the time to really understand what you're saying. People would rather react quickly than react thoughtfully.
Yeah, and I think we certainly saw that with the orthopedic cost. Tweets and clips from the show and just some of the quote unquote arguments we got into with some of the people who actually didn't even listen to the clips or the interviews. So speaking of Twitter, Coach, you actually posted, would you ever actually do a unilateral hop for distance if you weren't testing? I'm curious. We only hop for reactivity and height, never distance. Talk to me about what you kind of learned from this thread or because it was a pretty good thread.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes for me, what I'm looking for, I think sometimes, honestly, like everybody else, is a little bit of validation. Like, wait a second, is this odd or am I odd? And I think when we look at that idea, because what I'm realizing now is I'm seeing people say, oh, you've got to do these, lateral hop and 3 hop and, multiple whatever, is return to play tests. And then I'm thinking to myself, does anybody program any of this in their program when it's not return to play? And so that was the question. And actually, it's funny, Jim Kielbaso replied that yes, he does. So, and I haven't had a chance to respond to him, but I'm going to respond basically with thanks. It's nice to know somebody does it. I don't. The way that we design our plyometric program is generally not based around max effort jumps or hops. So we don't say, I want you to do 3 hops on your left leg and try to cover as much ground as you can. We'll generally lay out 3 hurdles that are at a set distance and then try to get that athlete to negotiate their way through those 3 hurdles or 5 hurdles or whatever it is. And so what I'm trying to do in this, I think there's going to end up becoming some sort of ACL project that comes out of this in the end, because I've been going back and forth with some people, private messaging on Twitter. I've been going back and forth with Phil Plisky, who I met initially through Gray. And just talking about, I mean, the ACL world is weird because it's a lot of emperor's new clothes in terms of people don't want to speak up and say, they don't want to ask the questions that I'm asking right now in terms of, why did open chain stuff come back? Why are we testing? Because my thing is, why are we having or listing a return to play test? That is something, and I'm trying to think, I just tweeted out a reply, and I basically said that the return to play test is something that you've never done before, never done in training, and will never do again. And yet that's going to determine whether or not you're ready to go back and play. I think that's very odd that you're going to say to somebody, okay, 3 hops or 1, single leg vertical jump measure right and left, and yet none of these things are trained. And reality is a lot of them don't seem to appear in the ACL programs. that I'm looking at, and yet suddenly they pop up as the test.
Yeah.
I just think that's a bit strange.
Yeah. And Jim had written, I may not be understanding the rehab part of the question. I think what you were saying was, why would you do it for rehab if you don't do it with your healthy athletes? But he does do, like you said, the hops for distance all the time with healthy athletes. And he asked the question, if athletes are going to run fast, why would it be a problem to hop for distance unless you notice they can't perform them well?
Well, and that would be, so my point of disagreement with that would be the reason that it would be a problem for them to hop for distance is we don't do repeated hops. And I had this conversation on Twitter a while ago too, in terms of you might get at some point a 2-hop situation where you land on one leg and then you kind of stutter and you hop again and you land on the same leg. But in general, that's not done. When you're running is opposition. Running is right to left. Running is basically a bounding action versus a hopping action. So that's what I mean too, is when people use that as an example, I think, oh, that's not a good example. Because multiple hops, multiple takeoffs and landings on the same leg is not, let's put it this way, it's not normal. There are very few, and somebody obviously, of course, had to chime in, in triple jump you do it. And I'm like, you're right, there's one thing where you actually do it. But in general, it doesn't happen. You don't see multiple hops. So you have to look at multiple hops and say, okay, one, I need to do multi-hops. I get it. I think that does have value. But then I look at that and think, do I need to do that for maximum distance? Because now there's exposure of gravity and flight time. And I think it gets a little bit dicier when you add the distance component in. And I remember I just went through this with a doctor a couple of weeks ago who said, I need you to hop test this girl. And I said, no. And she was, I think, a little bit offended. It was one of those sort of doctors aren't used to somebody telling them, no, they're not going to do something. I said, she hasn't done any multi-hop for distance. I don't, in good conscience, want to do that. If you want to bring her into your office and have her do it, that's up to you. I said, I'm not going to do it here because I don't think she's ready to do that. She hasn't shown me any readiness. We were doing 6-inch hurdles, hop and stick. And this woman wanted me to do 3 hops for distance on both legs and measure the 2 and compare them. And I was like, nope, not going to happen.
Coach, you also don't love the broad jump either, right? So
same reason. I don't love the broad jump for the exact same reason. I don't think that is, again, not very real world. And the main reason I don't like the broad jump, I had a kid not tear his ACL, but strain his ACL, an NFL combine guy. We were working on the broad jump because it's an event at the combine. And what I found is that competitive guys do competitive things. And so this kid who was about 6'6", about 275 pounds, he landed almost ass to heels trying to extend his long jump out, whatever, an extra, 6 inches or 8 inches or whatever it was. He was trying to prolong his flight time. So he stayed in his crouch in the air and he landed almost in a ball on the ground. And he got up and he was holding his knee. And I was like, fuck me, excuse my language. But I was like, oh my God, that's not what I wanted to have happen. But in his mind, he had seen long jumpers. You ever watch long jumpers kind of land in the pit? They'll land and they can kind of land and roll out of it, and we're on a rubberized gym floor, and it was a disaster. And honestly, I think that was probably the last broad jump we ever did.
Wow. Coach, let's finish up with kind of a fun one. Somebody wrote on Twitter, you're a varsity basketball coach, or it could be any coach. Your entire team is on the bus minus your point guard. The bus leave time was 4:45. The bus is leaving on time. And the missing player pulls in at 4:46. What do you do as a coach? You said hold the bus, bench the player for the first quarter if it's first events. Now, somebody else said hold the bus, don't penalize the athlete. You don't know what that person is going through. or why they were late. I like that part of it. I don't like, it's like, what if they slept in? He said he coached a 14-year-old who was working at an ice cream store till closing to help pay bills, and he came late to 7 a.m. practice. That's really that's too much information right now. Of course, we're probably gonna look at somebody who is in a bad situation and try to help them out any way they can. But can you expand on your thoughts on this idea?
Yeah, I do believe, and I think we've talked about this in terms of the exercise as punishment threat and some of those things. I do think you need to do something to maintain some level of control in terms of kids cannot be allowed to do whatever the heck they want, because if they do, you're going to have a really significant problem down the road, or maybe even sooner. So there has to be consequences. I do think, and again, one of the guys actually had a really good response. He said, is the kid responsible for getting himself there, or is a parent driving? That's a big variable in my mind in terms of, I've had people be late because their parents couldn't get them there in time. So I do think there's a lot of, like the guy said, the 14-year-old kid, there's a lot of below the line contextual stuff that you need to deal with. And the thought that came into my mind was Kurt Hester's Rants of a Strength and Conditioning Madman book, where he talked about knowing your kids and knowing the kid's life situation and knowing, is this kid, single parent home, 2-parent home? Is he being raised by his grandparents? I think there's so much of that stuff that's below the line that you're not seeing, that you have to kind of look at that and think, okay, I might have a different thought process if someone gave me another paragraph of context. My response was the simple, hey, if the kid's late, hold the bus, get him on the bus, let him know he's not starting, let him sit out a quarter. I think that's fair. I've been in teams where stuff like that has happened, and it's fair. Okay, that kid has to sit there for a quarter and watch everybody else play and realize that, shit, I was late, and that right now I'm getting punished. That's okay. You didn't leave without him. You didn't bench him for the whole game. You gave a punishment that fit the crime. You were late. It cost you a quarter.
Yeah.
Maybe if the kid's late the second time, okay, it cost you a half. Third time, maybe you just get rid of the kid and say, okay, you can't get here. But I also think you got to do the background investigation and figure out, okay, why aren't you here? The good thing for us, and I know we went through this at BU, is that most of the guys are going to be pretty honest. Someone will tell you that, hey, my fault, I overslept or whatever, or I thought I could catch the T and it would be sooner or whatever it was. And I think I try to give the kids the benefit of the doubt. I also realize that you may get away with one lie because I'm going to decide to accept that lie. But at the same time, if this happens again, I always kind of jokingly say, if you're the intern who has 2 deaths in the family during the course of the summer, I'm going to start to assume that you're lying. You know what I mean? Because everybody, it's like, well, tell them your grandmother died and you had to go to the funeral. And, that's kind of the standard way you're going to get out of something. But I feel like you get one of those, and then I'm going to start to do some investigating and figure out, okay, did this actually happen? What's going on below the surface? Is just this a kid who's a screw off, or is this a kid who's got legitimate issues that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah. Start checking the obituaries. You can't bring up hockey players, by the way. They're the best people, so it's not fair. Of course, they're going to be honest, and so. But one thing I will say on that, Coach, the problem with this is, okay, he came at 4:46. He's 1 minute late. You let it go. Then is it 4:47 or 4:49? When do you draw the line even for that one person? So I think that's where it can come and be a problem.
Exactly, and that's the stuff that you have to worry about. Is that exactly that? Where do you draw the line? When is it too much? When do you look at this and say, oh, okay, that's a real problem versus this wasn't that big a deal? And so that's why I think it's really simple. I think you just go with okay, we're going to hope that we can make the punishment fit the crime here, and you're going to pay a price that will not be too severe.
All right. Well, good stuff. On that note, Coach, we'll let you go. Thanks for doing this. Have a great Labor Day weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, welcome to Business Secrets for Gym Owners. I'm recording this one quickly as I'm about to get on a call with the 74 gym owners in the SPF Mastermind. And I'm teaching a concept called Who Not How. And this concept has been probably one of the most game-changing things I've learned in my business career. And the reason why people get burned out so much is they always say to themselves, hey, how am I going to get this done? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to, find the time to do marketing? How am I going to find the time, to build systems? How am I going to find the time? And they just kept asking how. And when you keep asking how things are getting done, you're going to get burnt out. And so I was introduced to this concept a few years ago called Who Not How, and the book is by a guy named Dan Sullivan. And it basically says that how are you going to get this done is the wrong question. And the right question is who can help me get this done, right? Not how am I going to get this done, but who can help me get this done. So a lot of times, I talk about marketing, right? And people, think that I always talk about how the gym owner needs to understand and learn marketing. And that is very true. But what it doesn't mean that you actually have to do everything, right? And I'll give you a quick example. So I send an email a day to my newsletter list, and I write the email in a Word document or a Google Doc, and then it stops there. But you might think, well, how does the email get sent? Well, the email gets sent to my director of marketing, and he edits the email. He puts the email into the software. I don't even know what software we use to send emails. I've never sent an email my entire life, right? And the reality is that stuff takes time. And in order for me to get more emails out, I need to focus on the part that I'm good at, which is writing the content. And then the who is the person that actually gets it out to the world. So this whole concept of who, not how, it's a game changer. So really, it's really two questions. You got to figure out, what do I want to accomplish, right? What do you want to accomplish? Is there a certain piece of your business you want to improve? Do you want to, overall look at how things are going? But asking yourself, what do you want to accomplish? And then the second question is, who can help me accomplish this goal? So for whatever that is in your life, whether it's a personal health thing, whether it's a business thing, whether it's, a relationship thing, whatever it is, it's like, what do you want to get done? What do you want to accomplish? And then who can help me accomplish this goal? Because when you ask how, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this done? And it adds a lot of stress to your life. So I strongly recommend reading the book, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. But really just taking what I just said today and starting to ask yourself this question is, who can help me accomplish this goal? And speaking of who can help me accomplish this goal, if you have a goal of getting more clients, well, guess what? I know a who that can help you accomplish that goal, and that who is me. Surprise, surprise. I just tied it into, a blatant sales pitch for myself. But if one of your goals is to get more clients, well, then if you're asking yourself, how am I going to get more clients? Well, that's the wrong question. The right question is, who can help me get the knowledge I need to get more clients? Or who can help me get the website I need? Or who can help me run the ads I need? Who can help me do this? And that's really the question you need to be asking yourself. So if you did ask that question about marketing and getting more clients, my advice is to head on over to club.vincegabriele.com, where you can get a 60-day trial of my Marketing Master Insiders program. So hopefully this was helpful. Start asking yourself who, not how, and things will get really, really clear for you. So we'll see you next time. Peace.
Hey everyone, welcome to Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training, brought to you by Perch, a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. I am Nico Willett, and I'm the head of marketing and education for Perch, and in this series on the Strength Coach podcast, we cover all things related to velocity-based training. Now, we've talked extensively about the theory of VBT and a little bit about programming and velocity drop, but we want to take today to delve into something pretty critical to gain an understanding of if your program is actually working with your athlete. And that thing is load velocity profiles and the importance of them. Put simply, the load velocity relationship is the relationship between the load lifted and the velocity at which it is lifted. So really a relationship between force generated and the shortening of the muscular contraction. Oftentimes, this is represented by a graph with a linear or polynomial regression, so really just a line, so you can see an athlete's capabilities visually represented. As load decreases, velocity will increase and vice versa. And ideally, this load velocity curve shifts to the right as an athlete becomes more proficient through each training cycle. Ideally, they can lift more load at a higher velocity. Athletes with variable strengths can express a skewed curve, which leaves room for improvement in obvious areas over others. For example, if an athlete is load deficient, they're very fast, but not very strong, and could probably use a few phases in the accelerative and absolute strength zones to get stronger. Velocity deficient, they're strong, but not very fast, and they could use some phases in the speed strength and strength speed zones to get a little bit quicker. Working in all velocity zones periodized over an annual plan is common. It's really the same as a typical macro cycle, but with just simply velocity zones assigned. Access to this data regularly can also help an athlete improve in areas that are specific to their sport or positional needs. Building a load velocity profile is like laying down a roadmap for your athlete to understand how and where they need to improve, but we do need a visual representation to fully paint that picture. And the only way to accurately get that is to gather objective data points that represent speed at load and then graph it. Once graphed, this information roughly translates to how quickly your athletes produce force at various percentages of their 1RM. And using an individual's slope and intercept and desired minimum velocity, we can actually estimate an athlete's 1RM without having to test for it. So we're not wasting time testing, and we're not taxing the athlete unnecessarily. Check out some of those resources on our Perch blog at perch.fit/blog for some more information on load velocity profiling. We do have quite a few protocols that you can undergo in order to accurately assess a load velocity profile for your athletes. Or reach out to us with any questions at perch.fit/strengthcoach. And that is all for today. Thank you for listening. And again, if you have any more questions about VBT or want more information and special deals, head to perch.fit/strengthcoach. That is perch.fit/strengthcoach.
All right, now it's time for the Naamly Hit the Gym of the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Naamly, the ultimate retention tool designed specifically for fitness coaches and gyms to help your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what you can do with this incredible tool. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on your free 30-day trial. All right, today I have on meathead and two-time Golf Digest top 50 golf fitness professional trainer, Allie Gilbert-Weingroff. She's become a highly sought-after lecturer. She has a unique approach to training that combines nutrition, training, and lifestyle hacks to alter body composition and optimize metabolism. A lot of her clients, too, we're just talking about this offline, are trainers as well, because they understand the importance of some of this stuff, and it can get a little, technical. And we're going to go over some of this stuff. That's why we have her back on. We had her on last year, and I wanted to kind of keep revisiting this stuff because it's not easy. And also, she's hosting the Silverback Summit in October, the 27th to the 29th in Palm Beach Gardens. So we're going to talk all about that later. Allie, thanks for coming on again.
Dude, I wonder if I could condense my bio and just have it say meathead. Is that enough?
It might be enough. It might be enough. Just be like meathead Allie Gilbert / Weingroff. I still say Allie Gilbert. It's still new to me. Like Allie Weingroff doesn't roll off my tongue. Allie W. Allie G is so much better than Allie W.
So that the story behind that, I changed my entire website to allieweingroff.com because I'm like, all right, well, people will know who I am because they know Charlie. And then I was like, this is just not working. And it was such a pain in the ass because like we got married when I'm 40 and I'm just like, I have to change my entire life. So I go by Allie Gilbert. I changed my domain back.
You did? No way.
Yeah, so Chris Porter is the only one that calls me Allie Gilbert Weingraf. So everyone from PB refers to me as like Allie GW. And I'm just like, all right, I'll just roll with it.
So by the way, and so this is a quick funny story about Charlie. Nobody knows his last name because everybody calls him, just says Charlie. I told Charlie, I used to be like, Charlie, you're like Madonna or fitness or, nobody knows your last name. Everybody just says Charlie. And we were even at a conference, Art Horn's conference one year, and we were counting, the two of us were counting every time somebody just referenced like Charlie. They didn't say like, oh, so if you listen to Charlie Weingraf, they were like, well, what Charlie was talking about was blah, blah. And even Mike said it last episode. He didn't even say Charlie's last name. Last episode, if you listen to Mike's segment, he mentions Charlie twice and he doesn't say his last name. So I think it was a good move to go in that direction. All right. So, Allie, let's get into this. And I wanted to take a different approach with this interview from the perspective of really diving deep into the problem right away. So I know, I've seen you talk, obviously. The last time I saw it, I didn't get to see in Chicago, but it was in December of last year. And I really want you to go into what is this problem that men are facing right now from the perspective of health?
So we have this low testosterone epidemic that seems to have been deteriorating in the last, I would say, decade because guys' test levels are dropping about 1% a year. And it's crazy to think that when you talk about going on or even considering hormone replacement for women when they go through menopause, it does not have the same social stigmas attached to it that it does for guys. And I'm not trying to sell everybody on going on testosterone replacement, but more so to kind of diffuse that awkward, taboo discussion surrounding it, because a lot of guys feel if they have low testosterone and they're suffering from some of these symptoms, that they would feel defeated and like they lost some sort of battle if they considered hormone replacement. So what is causing this and what are we, going through right now? And a lot of it is very much environmental and lifestyle related. So very similar to stuff that's just causing an overall obesity and health crisis. So obviously the more body fat somebody's carrying, the more unhealthy life that they live, the body does not see a reason to procreate, so it's not going to keep hormone levels optimal, so people aren't going to feel good. And it's tough sometimes to determine, like, all right, am I, and I'm going to talk as if I'm one of you guys, am I low T or am I depressed? Am I just out of shape, or is it all of the above? And so I kind of play detective and help guys understand what they're actually experiencing and then what they can do about it going forward, no matter what age. Because we used to think it was like, oh, if a guy is 60 plus, that's probably low T. But we're now seeing it in guys in their 20s. And so that's why I feel like it's more of an epidemic, because it's affecting so many guys at so many different ages.
Yeah. And I think, going through my own health stuff recently, with over the last like X amount of months, I think I sent you my TRT, my not TRT, my testosterone level.
Yeah.
And that was not the problem for me personally. And then I had my heart checked and that's not the problem. But what are some of the symptoms? Because and not from almost like on one of those drug commercials where they're like, if you take this, you could experience A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got all those, So what are some of the things that what are some of the symptoms or some of the red flags that like, whoa, this is something you need to look at?
So a lot of guys, the first thing to go, and this can be more in the younger guys, is like overall clarity and cognition. So the ability to make very clear, decisive, affirmative action, decision, stuff like that. Brain fog is another term for that. A lot of guys are like, I don't feel that same motivation for my career, for my family, for anything in life. And that lack of drive is one of the first things to go, but it's not normally commercially associated with low testosterone. So they don't think of it as that's being the issue, but that usually is number one. Number two would be very much the inability to recover, not only from training, but just from life in general. Like if you're just feeling completely lethargic lately and low motivation, I would say borderline even depression, because that can be very similar to the symptoms of low testosterone, and developing body fat storage patterns in places that, you didn't have. That's when guys are like, all right, something's off and something's different. And this also can be combined with loss of erection quality, erection strength, or even erection frequency, because low testosterone can contribute to libido and erectile dysfunction, though it's not the entire problem. And that's something we can go into later. But that can be part of it for sure. So understanding where somebody is from a health standpoint. So if you're experiencing these things, what are you doing from your nutrition and diet and training perspective to at least alleviate that from a health standpoint? Because those are things that you would have to do if you sought treatment anyway. So those are really the big glaring rocks that usually start with guys, is that mental clarity starts to diminish. And it's not so much an ADD thing. It's more so a hormonal thing.
Also, I feel like, and I don't know, it's just because we have access to social media, but now I feel like more people talk about, I have depression, or it could be some mental health issues, but at the same time, is that almost overdiagnosed? Is that, have you found that to be like they're kind of misdiagnosing these things and they're overlooking the testosterone piece?
100%. A lot of, like, my veterans are a big example of this. So I have a lot of guys who have transitioned out of the military, and when you leave the military, you can deal with some post-traumatic stress, but also a lot of depression. And they get what is called like the military starter pack, where they're sent home with an ADHD medication, a sleeping pill, because the ADHD medication will keep them so stimulated. They need something to bring them down, in addition to antidepressants, when a lot of the times, especially if you've been exposed to explosives or had some sort of traumatic brain injury, that's going to affect your body's ability to produce the right hormones. So they don't even test the hormones. And that's usually what should be the first thing that should happen. So a lot of the times we don't think, oh, I feel, sad, or I feel really like lethargic, I should probably get my hormones tested. Now, granted, in trainer world or in our world, we're more likely to go to that, but not your average person. They're not going to think, oh, I need my hormones tested, because number one, it's not something you're going to get from a GP anyway. And number two, they wouldn't really know where to go for that. So they more think that it's going to be some sort of mental health issue. And I do think everything is kind of amplified with social media nowadays. Like, even if you're looking at like weather patterns and traffic, like I never knew that it snowed in Kansas because we didn't have social media, years ago. So the more you see other people struggling, the more you might think, oh, this resonates with me. Maybe I'm struggling also. So those are like kind of two separate things, I know, but still, I think it is something that is very much overdiagnosed and kind of dismisses how hormones can play a part of this too.
Yeah, I think, in my lecture, I had this, I show a clip from Susan Pinker doing her TED Talk and talking about the strongest predictor of how long you'll live. And number one and number two is your social, the tight-knit social groups that you have, like your friends and family. But then number one was what was called social integration. And that is all the people that you speak to during the day, so like the guy at the coffee shop, the guy at the deli, there's 2 New York things, right? Like the way I just said coffee in the deli, like nobody has a deli around here. If I would have said bodega, that would have really been. But the people like, maybe like somebody in your building, if you have security in your building, if you live in a building, whatever. So like the people that you see all the time, your mailman, you're talking to all these people, even though they're not like, you're not talking to them about, your problems, et cetera. But it's how many of those interactions you have in a day. So have you seen over the last 2 years with the pandemic, have you seen also, has it become harder to diagnose some of these things, or it's not really because, we have blood work, and which is why I love Inside Tracker, because now I can get all these different biomarkers. But how has the pandemic changed things for you?
So it's funny because you and I have talked about this because you and I are both people, and working from home and not being around people all the time, it really gets to us. And even though we have home offices and stuff, it's I can't be home all day, just like you, we need that interaction. And Charlie and I were actually talking about this when we were in Greenwich Monday morning. We were going to go to the airport, and we went to Starbucks on Greenwich Ave, and it was 5 a.m. They had just opened. And the workers were not necessarily what you would call cheery. And we were both if we had a side job, we would want to work in a coffee shop because you could be the first person that someone sees, and it really sets the tone for the day. And the fact that these people were kind of very moody and blah, I was this is no way to start a great Monday. So if you have the ability to cheer somebody up and you're the first person that they see, they might live alone. They might go to Starbucks just because you know their name. That has a massive impact on somebody's psychology. So not having that with the pandemic, or people who are home with, family members that maybe they didn't realize they had a lot of disagreements with from certain standpoints, and the added stress, there was a huge impact on guys' mental health. So much so that I had never had so many discussions regarding erectile dysfunction than I did in 2020, because guys were questioning what they're doing, questioning if something was wrong with them because they're 26, 27, in their 30s, or if they're on TRT, questioning their protocol because they're I just don't have the same erection quality that I used to, or they just had a lack of interest in sex anyway. And I said, you have to understand and appreciate the stress that you're under right now, because that's not really your erection is going to be impacted by that more so than anything else during this type of time. And no one really thinks of that, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s. You're oh yeah, I'm under stress, but I'll just go alleviate it by working out and seeing friends and all this stuff. But then when all that gets taken away from you, it has an even harder impact. So that was big for a lot of guys, because I think they realized a lot of them who also provide for the family. And then that was kind of unpredictable and under question, that they didn't really have that same mental clarity as well as the EQ to really understand and appreciate what was going on with them and why and how it was affecting them.
I know you always you kid around a lot about it, but there's a reason why you're doing it. You always say, normalize boner talk, right? And so what made me think of this question right now is just of you talking about these young men in their 20s and 30s who might be seeking out your help. But I could imagine all of the people or men that won't go anywhere because they'd be afraid to even mention that, to say yeah, here's the problem. I'm not tired, but having problems down there. I mean, have you found that that's a huge problem? Is that why you're trying to normalize this whole thing?
Yeah, because you're a guy, right? You guys don't talk about this stuff in the locker room. You're watching somebody blow dry their testicles instead. But women will definitely socially talk about this stuff openly. With guys, it's much different. And I think because people ask me too, like, do you think guys would find it difficult to talk to you because you're a woman? And you would think that that might be the case. However, I think what they tell me is the way that I talk about it so directly and openly makes them feel comfortable. But the fact that I am a female acknowledging that, hey, this may not be normal, but it is very common, makes them feel better. Like, okay, so a woman's not going to necessarily freak out if she realizes that I'm 35 and maybe can't maintain an erection, and I'm not their wife or girlfriend nagging them to go to the doctor. Similar to how, your spouse or close friend, it's hard to coach them, or, I have Charlie working with my grandphone because I refuse to coach him. So you can't have somebody that close to you who's actually going to listen to you. So talking about it openly, it's gotten to the point where guys now will say, hey, I've watched one of your podcasts, or I've watched this. So this is what I'm dealing with my boner. And it's just a normal conversation. It didn't start that way. It wasn't like, hi, I'm Allie. How's your erection quality? What's up? Like, that's not how it started. I mean, when people feel comfortable enough to DM me these things, it's almost like their confidence and their ability to confide in me makes me feel even better about the fact that I talk about this stuff, because I know it may seem weird from the outside, but now a lot of guys are like, oh my God, I didn't even think of stress, or I didn't even think of, like I had one client who he would lose his erection every time he was intimate with a woman with a relatively, like, his longest relationship. And so I asked him about his first relationships, and he dated girls in high school that literally ridiculed him for whatever. And that's what was coming about. But he's not going to go seek out therapy necessarily to talk about this, because maybe he doesn't think of that as an issue. So it's stuff like that. How this got from, like, the fitness industry to this is what I do now is really, the golf fitness stuff. But I've just enjoyed allowing guys to feel comfortable and talk about this stuff so much, because it does have such severe consequences to their health if they don't confront it.
That's a great segue into, we talked about what the problem is. We've talked about the symptoms. Let's talk about the consequences. So what are the consequences of this? What can all of this lead to? Like, somebody might say, well, look, it's okay not to have I'll allow my body. I think John Berardi even said that, like, I'm okay with my testosterone falling naturally. So talk to us about what are the consequences of all this?
So the big ones would be, and these are one of the ones that are very much a social stigma, is that testosterone, having optimal testosterone, will cause cancer, will cause heart attacks, and can cause other issues related to that. And it's actually now been proven, and there are early studies that were showing that, but now all of those have been refuted, that having lower levels of testosterone make you more at risk to a cardiovascular event and more at risk to developing cancer. So that would probably be like the two big ones that are talked about most often. But there are a lot of social or emotional and mental health things that come along with that, similar to what we discussed before. We're having clarity, having cognition, getting rid of brain fog. So you're going to have a better ability to build muscle. Muscle is essential for longevity and health. You're going to be able to recover a lot better if you have optimal levels. And I'm talking optimal as if a guy would go on testosterone replacement. And I think one of the biggest things that needs to be mentioned is when someone thinks of TRT, they think a guy is gaining an edge, he's cheating, or he's on the juice. Testosterone replacement is replacement. Like, you're basically replacing what you should already be biologically producing. It is nothing more than that. And if anything, it just augments a guy's recovery so that they can actually do more in life. There are plenty of guys who are on TRT and they do not look like they are on TRT from what is usually the stigma. So that is one of the biggest things, because a lot of guys, like I said earlier, feel defeated if they have to resort to that. And there are things you can do to optimize yourself naturally, but those are also things that you should do if you go on TRT anyway. And that's just basic health, like making sure your blood pressure is in check, because high blood pressure can impact your boner. Blood pressure medications, even more so. Blood flow, your arteries and your veins and your cardiovascular health, as you know, is a massive contributor to your longevity. And having an understanding of how that also affects erection quality is usually the catalyst that will get guys to take action on that. I have a speaker talking about this at the summit. So that, and understanding like what they can do about it from a blood work perspective, what they can take into their own hands. And so living longer is a pretty damn good thing. And a lot of guys who have gone on testosterone replacement feel really good. And a lot of guys who actually got their health in order to optimize their testosterone feel really good as well. And that's basically what we all as fitness professionals do anyway. Like if we get somebody to become more insulin sensitive and maybe reverse type 2 diabetes and actually get their body fat down, this is going to give them the same tools that they would need anyway on testosterone replacement, just to get just to build a better future for themselves from living longer, feeling better, and then being more resistant to any of these diseases and comorbidities.
So, Ali, let's before I get into, I want to go into how we fix it, naturally, and then go into the TRT. But at what level? Like, so I go to Inside Tracker, right? And they do tell me my testosterone. At what level would you be like, say, hey, this is bad, this is okay, this is good? Just give us some numbers here.
So the range is really wide, and it's been changed multiple times by different lab companies because guys are showing up with lower and lower levels. Now, the reason this is important is because it's traditionally insurance companies that will qualify you to go on TRT based on a certain number in this arbitrary range. So we use it for understanding where a guy is at. However, anybody who is going to go on testosterone replacement or seeking hormone optimization should definitely not even think about using their insurance or anyone associated with that. So that being said, the range used to be around 350 to 1100. And now it's dropped down where the lowest that I've seen is around 186 up to 8 something. So generally speaking, if a guy has a total testosterone over 500, then that's considered a good number, good in quotations, but it doesn't really mean much compared to a free testosterone, which is the testosterone that your body can actually have access to. And you want that at least around, 25, 30. And that's going to be dependent on lifestyle and diet and stuff like that. And when it comes to what number is best, yes, there is this lab marker that we have to use, but a lot of it is going to be subjective because there are many guys, they've had like someone asked me, they had a total testosterone of 1,000 naturally, but their free T was only 10. And the testosterone gets bound by two things in the body: sex hormone binding globulin and albumin. Sex hormone binding globulin can go sky high if somebody's got a very low carb diet or the keto guys or, some other lifestyle stuff. And then the body's like, well, I'm going to try and make more testosterone to try to push more free T, but that's not happening just for whatever reason. So they may have a sky high total T, and a clinic can say, or a doctor can say, oh, well, you're fine because your total T is 1,000, but the free is 10. The free T is really what's going to help symptom resolution. So it's hard to say what a specific number would be because it is contextual, but it's going to usually be higher than 500 with a free T that is higher than 10. Likely higher than 20 as well, and a guy has symptom resolution.
Interesting, because that's me, really. 895 and 10 the last time I did it.
Yeah.
So,
yes, you could, I mean, you could say that your total is X, and a lot of insurance-based companies will only run a total testosterone on labs. And then that's what the doctors will go by, where there really is so much more as part of that picture. Dependent if somebody's getting it done for the first time, you want to look at the gonadotropins. Like, is he actually sending the signal to produce testosterone? What type of hypogonadism does he have? So there's a lot that goes into that to determine, is a guy a candidate? What's the root cause for his testosterone being low? And then what can he do about it? Should he consider TRT or should he consider other things first?
Well, let's get into that then. Let's talk about what we can do first from the perspective of, just on our own, and then what the alternatives, like things like TRT, that we can do. So what can we do? What would you say? Like, okay, let's first start out doing A, B, C, and D. What would those things be?
The number one thing, and this was pretty much the big rock in my approach or in my talk at Perform Better this year, was lowering body fat in a man. And many guys think that they're lower than they are. So we've all had somebody who said, yeah, I'm like 19%, and they're really 26. So getting body fat, personally, I would say if a guy is 20 to 25%, we want to get that below 20, because that is where he's not going to be as inflammatory, because fat is a very inflammatory tissue. He's going to be more insulin sensitive, and he's just going to have better health markers overall. And so this involves being aerobically fit, addressing your diet, stuff like that. But that would be the number one thing, is that if you have body fat to drop, let's work on that, because that alone can help elevate testosterone levels to a more optimal level. So that would be A. And then B would be, let's assess the stressors in our life that are controllable and not controllable. So I have a lot of guys, big, busy lives, run businesses, type A. And I even had a guy say to me the other day, he worked with a coach and he hated working with him because he had him doing all these biohacking things like don't touch the receipts and wear blue light blockers, stuff I used to talk about. And he was like all these little nitpicky things, when the big rocks for him were actually his diet and his training. He was training way too many days a week. I think it was 6 days a week, and he was definitely not eating enough. And I was like, all right, let's not worry about touching a receipt from CVS that we could wear as a scarf. Let's not worry about blue light. Let's not worry about any of that until we actually confront what the biggest problems are and the most controllable. Everybody can pretty much control their training. We can control whether or not we decide to go to the gym. So since training is a stressor, even though it helps us relieve stress, let's look at what a realistic number of days to train is. Most guys who are really stressed out and who have chaos in their life, 3 days a week is fantastic. If they don't have this amazing, crazy physique goal and they just want to get healthier, total body 3 days a week really does a lot. What do you do in the off days? Go for a walk. Do something that lowers stress, because we can control that. Next, nutrition, we can control mostly. Granted, we don't have to train every day, but we have to eat every day. So most people are going to respond to nutrition. Not everyone's going to respond to training. And I'm talking about body composition perspective. So nutrition, we can absolutely control. Is somebody eating enough protein? Are they eating enough overall to contribute to what they're doing? Most guys, even though women, we get pegged with it, most guys are not eating enough for the activity that they're doing, or they're eating the wrong ratios, which is they're not having enough protein and they're not having enough fuel from fats and carbs, again, for their activity level. Very contextual as well. So reining in your diet and your training are going to be B, because those are the biggest stressors that we can control. And then everything else is more of an inventory of what is controllable and not. If you have kids, okay, can't really lock them in a cage, or if you want, you can, that's your decision, whatever. But like, we can control how we react to it and how we manage it. Can we rearrange our sleep schedule? If you're a parent, most of the time you're training early in the morning and then you're going to go to bed a little bit earlier. So you might have to give up whatever show you're watching during the week, but you can ask a lot of new dads. Their time to train is going to be around the 5, 6 a.m. hour. So let's look at our schedule. Let's take inventory on what is affecting us now. And then we can assess what our big rocks are. So that would be C, would be like the lifestyle interventions. And then DEF would be supplementation and then extracurriculars and biohacking stuff that people enjoy, like red light therapy and stuff like that, which I think is fantastic. I was not knocking it. I mean, I used to go hard as to what is an endocrine disrupting chemical and stuff like that. But then you realize, like, this is great and it's fear mongering sometimes. But if somebody's not even controlling their sleep and their training, you really have no business having them wear blue light blockers and all these other things when they can't even get the basics down. So it's kind of like a come to Jesus moment of like, all right, what am I doing in my coaching? I'm not going to load up these people who are super busy with all these things that they're like, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of the red food diet causing my testosterone to go down. How about I just look at what I eat every day? Because that alone is a huge dial mover, and then maybe go for a walk. So that would be like my hierarchy of what we can do naturally to kind of control our body's ability to produce optimal hormones.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I love Dr. Mike T. Nelson's approach with what he calls leverage. So some of the stuff and it's very similar to what you're saying right now. Some of the stuff is going to make a huge impact, like sleep, working on sleep. But it's one of the hardest things to change in people. So it's kind of lower on his list of recommendations, for example. So that's why one of the first things he talks about is have more protein, because it's so easy to add some protein to, extra protein in your day at first, or then building up to having protein with every meal, or then trying to figure out the actual grams, right? But that slow roll into it, and it's just an easy fix right away. So very similar to what you're saying, like so many people talk about these little things that, are not going to make the impact that you think they are. And people are going to be like, no, that's not going to work for me. I can't do that. So trying to make things easier is really, I just want to talk about supplementation really quick, because even though it's D on your list, it is pretty easy to be like, cool, at least I'm banging out some vitamin D and zinc. And can you talk about the important supplements that, you'd like to, you would change in somebody?
Yeah. And like it's more D because I think I get a lot of people who have, taken maybe 15 to 20 supplements and they're just over it. So they're like, here we go, another coach who's going to make me take supplements. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to just have you do the staples, because most people, miss that in their diet. And that would be a good quality multivitamin, not like a one a day or these gummies. I personally use Thorne. You're going to take more than 4 pills a day. That's just how every multivitamin is, unless you want it to be the size of a golf ball. But you cannot cram the needed nutrients that are in a multivitamin into one pill. It's just not possible. And then vitamin D is a big one. A lot of people miss the mark on that. My doctor, Dr. Eric Serrano, loves people to be upwards of 100 plus on vitamin D, which would come up toxic on most labs. But a lot of people are in like the 40s and 50s. So we need more than we think we do. Even living in Florida, where I'm outside every day, I still have to supplement with it. And I like people to have a fish oil, because a lot of guys don't eat a lot of fish, or they don't eat enough of the right types of fats. And I think that's a great starting point for a lot of people. You could add in creatine if they haven't, because it has a lot of cognitive benefits aside from just like for training. But those are really like the bare bones basics if somebody's willing to take supplements. And that's actually a question I started asking people, because I just assumed people would take them. There are people that it's like an added stressor to remember. So if they're coming off someone who used to give them a ton and they just hated it, I'm like, hey, are you willing to take supplements? If so, how many? Where can we start with? We could always add in more at a later time. And with, with the sleep thing, like, hey, if you change your habits around your training and your food and your stress, your sleep's going to improve anyway. So let's not just actively focus on that. Let's just focus on the other things, like Mike was saying too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to jump on the vitamin D thing, I always, whenever I get a chance to say this, I tell people, there's not a lot of people that go outside as much as I do. And I walk the dog 3 times a day. I ride my bike to work, whatever. I'm outside a ton. In the winter, even in Indy or New York, if it's above 20 degrees, I am wearing a t-shirt. Okay. So I have some quote unquote exposure. It means nothing because even in the summer, last year in September, I did my Inside Tracker blood work and I was low. And my neighbor actually is a doctor out of Chicago, and she has been involved in about 20 or 30 vitamin D research papers. And
cool.
She said, she goes, people think that they can go to the beach or whatever and they're going to get a lot of vitamin D. No, the problem is you go into the water, there's something to do with the oil on your skin and whatever it may be. The bottom line is you can't just get it from going outside. She's like, take the supplement, just do it. And I did. And now my D levels have risen. So, but I do love your idea about asking people, are you willing? Because it is hard. One thing that helped me was David Sinclair talks about pulsing. So he doesn't like to take, David Sinclair is the guy who wrote the book Longevity. He doesn't like taking them every day. He feels like almost like your body will adapt to them, where he takes them almost every other day. So I just thought that was an interesting take on it. Have you heard of pulsing?
No, I haven't, but I don't mind it at all. I think the problem too is like some of them you have to take with food. Some of them you have to take multiple times or without food. And it's like, oh my God, like, Serrano has me taking like my thyroid medication multiple times a day. And I have to put alarms in my phone. I don't remember every day, even if I do get an alarm. Like, it's just, it's a pain in the ass. But that's the one thing that I'm trying to focus on, is at least get that if I don't get all the other supplements, because no one's traveling with supplement cases everywhere. No one wants to take their pill box out if they're at a client lunch or something. Like, I get it.
It's so funny. I do have that pill box thing, because I'm like, no, you have to take these, bring them with you. But the funny thing is, you hit the nail on the head. I don't eat in the morning till, anywhere between 10 and 12. So I'll get up, I'll go for a walk with Emma, I'm having some water. And then I'm like, well, I can't take my vitamin D because I'm supposed to take it with food. And then some days I'm like, shit, I forgot to take them because of exactly what you're talking about. Like, some you get to take, some you don't get. Oh man, it's a pain.
And then if you take it at night, it can be stimulatory. So then you're just like, fuck it, I'll do it the next day.
Yeah. So let's talk about, before we get to the Silverback Summit, I want to talk about, let's go over TRT and who you recommend it to, when you end up recommending it, and how does this process work? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So funny enough, I do get some messages where people are like, can you write me a script? And I'm like, I wish. I can't. So I know people who can, but if that's all you're looking for, I'm not your girl. I do help people understand whether they're a candidate or not. I also help facilitate if a guy has a physician or he's seeing a clinic that maybe does not have the best protocol or approach. I help them transition to somebody else. Obviously, it's based on where they live and stuff like that. But as far as if somebody's a candidate or not, usually like a blanket statement would be they give me labs, we see where they're at, we go through the coaching process, or if they just do a consultation, then we go through my recommendations. We do everything we can from a lifestyle perspective of everything we talked about today, because that's going to have to be done anyway. And some guys actually don't want to consider TRT until they've exhausted everything naturally. Sometimes they see that their testosterone within like a year just won't budge despite doing all the things. And then some guys, it goes up a little and it may or may not stay there. But regardless of the number, again, gentlemen, regardless of the number, it is how you feel symptomatically and whether we can resolve this through our diet, training, nutrition, and all that stuff, or do we need the replacement of what you should be biologically producing? So if a guy has all the symptoms that we were talking about earlier, if he just really feels like shit overall, then that may be something to consider. And sometimes they need it in conjunction with making all these lifestyle changes, because it is going to be the catalyst that is going to help motivate them. But if they are over 20% body fat, I always am like, listen, we're going to do this the natural way first. We're going to get the body fat lower because it will make them more resilient. It will make TRT work better for them. They won't need as high a dose and they'll feel better overall going on it. So it's kind of like this hybrid of like, I am an advocate medically because I know the right providers, but also we still have to do all these other things because you're going to end up doing it anyway. And that's why you came to me for coaching. And then we can reassess as to we move forward right away or, you know, we do it later on. And quite often it's usually a guy transitioning from some random medical clinic that he saw an ad for on Instagram and is not having great experience with.
Oh, I love that people think this might be it's replacement and it's just going to be the replacement of all the other stuff. And you're like, no, you have to do this other stuff too. So that's a great message. But tell me some other, just one or two other myths about TRT that and I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit. One of your guys is talking about Justin, I don't know how to pronounce it. He's talking about some of the myths. Give me one or two myths that are associated with testosterone therapy that maybe you can dispel.
A lot of guys think that it'll cause them to lose all their hair, which is a very warranted concern with some guys, because if you are genetically predisposed for hair loss, then it might speed up the process, but you're going to lose it anyway. So it does not intrinsically just cause hair loss. And I think that that's a concern because a lot of guys see that in the bodybuilders. There's a lot of myths that come from TRT because it's compared to what bodybuilders do, which they're on, 5 times what TRT dose is and other things that cause other side effects. So roid rage being one of the things that guys will experience if they go on TRT. You can actually be way more moody and irritable with lower testosterone levels. If your testosterone is too high, then you also might have some experience like some anxiety and stuff like that. But again, that's part of titrating up and down and finding the right dosage for you. It's not necessarily a consistent, you're going to have roid rage and hate everybody type of thing. So I think those are pretty big myths. The causing the heart attack is going to be a massive one too, because a lot of guys think that if they have high testosterone or they add testosterone, somehow it's going to give them thick blood that's going to clog the arteries and the heart and all that stuff. And that's just simply not true. It is very cardioprotective, as is estrogen. And the way to raise your estrogen as a man is to use testosterone. So you don't want high estrogen and low T, but having high T with adequate estradiol is going to be helpful for a guy, because that's also another myth, is that estrogen is bad. And this is kind of a tangent, but it's one that I always have to go on. I've pissed off too many clinics with it, but a lot of clinics will give medications to lower estrogen. So if you think about a menopausal woman, what happens when a woman goes through menopause? She loses estrogen. Her body shape changes. So she stores fat around the midsection. She's prone to osteoporosis, and she's much more insulin resistant. Those same things can happen to a man if he suppresses and crushes his estrogen levels, because there are receptors on the cardiac tissue, even the brain. Like, it keeps guys' libido's in check. So a lot of guys can lose their erection and their libido if they tank their estrogen. So when testosterone enters the body through, needle or cream or whatever, it does get converted into estrogen, and that is a good thing. And we want that to happen. We don't want to block that process. And then back to the hair loss, because I'm ADD and forgot to mention something. So there are medications that guys will be given to block the enzyme that converts testosterone to something called DHT, which is a potent form of testosterone that can cause the hair loss. But those medications we don't want to use either. So any medication that really blocks an enzymatic reaction is not going to be a good scene. So you're basically also blocking testosterone production by using things like Propecia, which is finasteride and stuff like that. So those would be probably like the biggest concerns. Acne is one of them. If you had acne as a kid, you might get it with testosterone. That's caused by testosterone. It's not caused by the estrogen. But again, when you find a dosage that's stable and that's good for you, then a lot of this stuff subsides. So, it's scary at first, and I get it. But again, this is restoring what you should already be producing. It's not putting you on these massive super physiological levels, and, it'll make you explode into the Hulk by the next week. Trust me, I wish it would. I mean, listen, we still have to work hard. I'm on TRT. I've been on TRT upwards of a year and a half. And it did not turn me into She-Hulk overnight. Like, we all still have to spend time in the gym and pay attention to our diet. So it does a lot of really good things, but it doesn't do everything.
Okay, let's finish up here with October 27th to 29th down in Palm Beach Gardens. You are hosting the Men's Health and Fitness Event of the Year, the Silverback Summit. Give us an overview of this 3-day in-person event.
God, that sounds so cool. I want to go. Oh, wait, I'm good. I realized that a lot of guys connect about, everything we talked about today online, in forums, in a Facebook group that I'm a moderator in. And we have medical conferences that doctors go to. We have fitness conferences that all of us go to. But nobody really combines the two to where if a guy really wants to understand what is my cardiovascular risk, what is my future as far as my testosterone, how the hell do I eat, how do I train, where do I go for these answers, this would be the event for that. So think about clients that we have. When you train people online or in person, they don't have the same meathead background that we had growing up, at least these days. A lot of guys have never been properly taught how to deadlift. They've never been taught how to actually bench press. And they haven't even been taught the variations of that to work around injuries and stuff like that. Like, typical guy goes to the gym for 3 hours, bench presses, talks, and that's really it, because he doesn't really know what to do. So let's teach these guys some of these things. And I have Brian Cron coming from Canada, and he and I are going to practically take guys through training sessions, and fitness professionals can benefit from this too, because who doesn't learn stuff, even if it's basic, if it's review. And then all the lectures are going to be all the people that I go to learn this stuff I have brought into one place. They're going to address the risks and the benefits and all this stuff. This is prostate cancer, Jordan Grant, who's a urologist, he has guys with prostate cancer who are still on TRT. Usually you get taken off of it and chemically castrated. He's going to talk about what the true approaches and protocols are for prostate cancer. And my other guys are going to talk about the risk for cardiovascular events. So Dr. Twyman, who has been on Mark Bell podcast, Gabriele Lyons podcast, he talks about what cholesterol really means, the true risks behind cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, can't say that fast, endothelial function, and then how that affects your erection, and what are the actual tests that you can do, because a calcium score may not be enough. And then all the nutrition and fitness stuff that I talk about at Perform Better, Brian's going to talk some about this. So, and I've also arranged for a bourbon tasting, a barbecue dinner, a night at Drive Shack. So it's for both fitness pros and non-fitness pros who are dudes to come together to get the answers that they want, that they've sought for so long, but in one place where there's nobody judging and all sensitive topics can be brought up. And I have a ton of cool sponsors and stuff. So it's going to be really fun.
So I saw there, you're not really allowing the average woman, like you're discouraging the average woman from coming. Am I correct?
Yeah. Discouraging, I guess. It sounds like mean, but I wanted the environment to feel safe for guys to talk about this stuff. Now, whether this is a mistake on my part, I don't know, but I do have there's a female TRT provider who is coming. So I think that, guys feel good being in that environment of other dudes who are going through a lot of the same stuff. And I'm not sure if those conversations, because we do have a lot of roundtables and stuff, would happen if there were women in the room. I don't know that, but I assumed that, and it's my first time putting on this event. So if guys are like, I don't really care, or we could have had chicks, then hey, maybe next year we invite everybody. But for now, that's what it's going to be.
Very cool. All right. Well, we'll have a link for that. You can go to silverbacksummit.com. We will have links for that. I got one last question. If you know, it could be a game changer. Bourbon tasting from who?
I have no idea.
Okay. See? Damn.
Well, we're having like the dinner at Pig Beach in Palm Beach, which is one of Charlie and Don's clients own it. And they had a Brooklyn location. It's a very, very high-end barbecue. So when I talked to him about the bourbon tasting, he was telling me about all these names. I don't know where they're from, who they are. You could say it's like, Valley Creek from Louisiana. And I'd be like, yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, sounds like you know a lot about bourbon. Valley Creek from Louisiana. Yeah. Anyway.
You're not me yet.
By the way, if you have the right ones, you could attract a few more people. Let's get that up there on the ads, Allie.
I'll look into that then.
Allie, thanks for coming on today, going over really this kind of crisis for men's health and, the consequences and really how we fix it, and looking forward to the Silverback Summit. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, dude. Always a pleasure. You guys are the best. I appreciate you so much.
All right. Hey, guys, if that interview really got you thinking about your own testosterone, among other things, one way to really get a look under the hood is by using Inside Tracker. I use it. I love it. You heard me talking about some of the numbers in there. If you want to get 20% off, use my code RENNAPRO20, RENNA Pro20. Honestly, I've used it twice. I'm ready. I'm due for my next blood work again, and it's just a great way to look under the hood. All right, that's going to do it for episode 342 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Remember, you can try strengthcoach.com out 7 days for free, totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum as always. To access the offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Special thanks to Chris Poirier and the folks over at Perform Better. Remember, the huge summer sale is going on right now, 40% off a ton of items, including TRX, suspension trainers, ultimate sandbags, all kinds of cleaning supplies, roller rollers, plow boxes, and so much more. Check it out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Allie Gilbert-Weingroff for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and testosterone. Thanks to Naamly, helping build relationships through personalized communication. So you remember, stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on your free 30-day trial. Thanks to Vince Gabriele and Kiss Marketing. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson, Vince Gabriele's secret marketing weapon. He'll take a look at your current marketing plan and give you some real-time profit-boosting advice so you can stop stressing about your marketing and see some more money in your checking account. KissMarketing.net to book your free coaching call. Thanks to Nico Willett and Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. Head over to perch.fit/strengthcoach to find out more about it. They have some great videos showing the cameras and how to use it. Thanks to Athletic Greens. Visit athleticgreens.com/strengthcoach. You get a free year supply of vitamin D. If you heard Allie, you need your vitamin D, and you get 5 free travel packs today. My name's Anthony Rana. Check out the show notes at continuefit.com or strengthcoachpodcast.com. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. I'll speak to you next time.